discussion, I would like, for those that are joining us for the first time, I would like to introduce the organization to us, what we do, we are, so you will be familiar with the organization. So I would like to share my screen. Sorry. Okay. Can you all see my screen? Hello?
Yes, yes, I can see.
Okay. So, Aquaworld, about Aquaworld. Aquaworld is like youth inclusive non-governmental organization that dedicated to implement creative solutions to promote marine protection and deploying pragmatic approaches to improve the aesthetic value of coastal community in Nigeria. And it was founded in 2019. So, and the main focus of this organization is for marine protection and conservation, environmental enhancement and beautification, community resilience to climate change, youth empowerment and inclusion, evidence-based and data-centric approach, capacity building and knowledge sharing. So if you want to know more about the organization, you can visit the website, which is aquaworld.org.ng, so you can learn more about what we do and the activities of the organization. So back to today's topic, and who is our guest for today? We have Mr. Moses Ndugwa. He's a Ugandan PhD candidate in biology, focusing on ecotoxicology at the University of Antwerp, Belgium. He brings over 5 years of experience as an aquaculture research scientist in Uganda, complemented by a Master of Science in Aquaculture from Ghent University. Moses specializes in sustainable aquaculture and environmental impact assessment, integrating both fieldwork and laboratory research. His current research focuses on the ecophysiological and behavioral responses of aquatic organisms to anthropogenic periods, with the broader goal of modeling how human activities influence species population, community dynamics, and ecosystem health. Nice to have you here, Mr. Moses. So we start the presentation. Over to you, Mr. Moses. You can start. Thank you. Stop here.
Yes. Thank you so much, Suebat and the team from Aquaworld. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share, to discuss, and exchange ideas about our privileged natural resources that we have in Africa. Yeah, I have a short presentation that I'll give. I'm going to share my screen first. Then we will discuss afterwards. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Very well?
Yes.
Okay. Moses Ndugwa is my name, as Suebat introduced me, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Antwerp at the Ecosphere Department, Ecosphere Research Group at the Department of Biology. Yeah. Our discussion title is Disturbed Waters, Assessing the Ecotoxicological Footprints of Human Activities in African Lakes and Streams, as well as rivers. Yeah, as we may know, Africa is endowed with vast freshwater resources. And just to give a brief of which I hope every African in this line is privileged about, we have, say, the three of the largest lakes in the world are in Africa. And also, we have some rivers, River Nile, the Congo, the Niger, the Zambezi, the Limpopo, and many other tributaries and small lakes. They are all in Africa. And Africa, I think, is one of the continents with the most freshwater resources. So these resources, we are endowed with them, but due to so many activities going on, due to the way we use them, sometimes we exert a lot of pressure than they can handle. For example, a key hot topic recently is pollution, water pollution. This is not affecting only Africa, but it's affecting the entire world. For example, as we know that water pollution is the contamination of water bodies, like lakes, rivers, oceans, groundwaters, as well as aquifers, by the introduction of harmful substances, both from natural, maybe volcanic eruption, as well as anthropogenic sources due to human activities. And once such chemicals enter the water systems or the aquatic systems, they tend to degrade the quality and hence threatening the life of both humans that depend on them as well as the entire aquatic ecosystems. Normally, this can be through chemical pollution, for example, where we have inorganic pollutants like heavy metals, mostly from mining and industrial runoffs. It can be through organic pollution, for example, through sewage, poor sewage management or agricultural runoffs. And also it can be physical, for example, through soil erosion resulting from, say, deforestation or mining activities where large particles or silt tend to be deposited into the water streams and lakes, causing reduced stability. And this normally reduces the light penetration into the water systems, which reduces primary productivity, and sometimes it can lead to ecosystem collapse. For the organic pollutants, for example, they increases the chance of our water systems to be contaminated with the pathogens, or also increasing the organic matter content in the water systems. As you know, once the organic matter content increases beyond what the system can handle, we risk our system getting eutrophied. And with the eutrophication, we have these recurrent algal blooms together with their consequences. So these pollutants disrupt the aquatic food webs. They can cause toxicity in fish and vertebrates, and then threaten biodiversity as well as water safety for human consumption and also for other users. Moving forward, if we sorry, okay, so now that we have looked at the brief about water pollution, then what is aquatic ecotoxicology? I think these words are familiar to some people. They may not be familiar to other people. Words like pollution, words like toxicology, words like ecology, words like ecotoxicology. If you look at this word ecotoxicology, it's a combination of two words, eco for ecology and toxicology, yeah, which simply means the study of chemicals or the effect of chemicals on living organisms. In this case, if it's aquatic, then it will be the study of the effects or the impacts of these chemicals or pollutants to aquatic organisms. But what makes aquatic toxicology, ecotoxicology, so interesting is that if you compare it to just normal aquatic toxicology, is that it enables us to study the properties and behavior of pollutants in aquatic systems, as well as the impacts of the pollutants at organisms, population, and community levels, and the entire ecosystem. So with the ecotoxicology, we look at the impact of these chemicals at different levels of the biological organization of organisms. For example, if in ecotoxicology we can look at the interaction between the pollutants themselves, for example, between the same group of pollutants, for example, heavy metals between heavy metals, or within or between different classes of pollutants. For example, we can look at the effects of heavy metals and pesticide residues or pharmaceuticals or microplastics in combination, and then we see how their sublethal effects change or impact the organisms and the ecosystems. There is a simple, sorry, I was in not in the presentation mode. Sorry for that. Yeah, there is a simple flow diagram that shows how ecotoxicology can be broken down. For example, in this study of the effect of substances on living organisms and the environment. So here we look at all levels of biological organization. If you look at this graph, on the y-axis we have the ecological relevance, on the x-axis we have the complexity or time. And so so these two variables, ecological relevancy and the complexity, they work hand in hand in terms of ecotoxicology. For example, on the x-axis, complexity, we have DNA. This is at molecular level. We have at the cellular level. We have at the organismal level, individual level, population level, the community, and then the entire ecosystem. Complexity and time doesn't mean that when you study something at the molecular level, it's less complex. No. Here, it just implies that when you study, if you are trying to track the negative impact of a given chemical or pollutant and you start at the molecular level or the cellular level, you can track the sublethal or the toxic effects of a given chemical early enough before it can impact the entire organism or the population or the community. So at all these levels, we target particular biomarkers. For example, if we study things at the cellular level, we look at the biochemical and the functioning and cell structure. For example, the energy reserves in the cell. If you look at the organ level, we can look at the physiological functions such as respiration and osmoregulation. All these important physiological processes are impacted once an organism is being exposed to toxicants. Or if we look at the individual level, now we look at the growth, the death and reproduction, as well as behavior, how these organisms, say fish, say marine, aquatic worms, or insect larvae, or mention all the organisms, how they respond to this chemical pollution. And the kind of response that is shown by these organisms is it tells a different meaning. For example, if we found out that, okay, a given fish, their growth and reproduction as well as behavior, say reproductive behavior or feeding behavior is being compromised. Yeah, in short term, it can already tell us that, okay, because a given fish species is being compromised through its reproduction, it can lead to population decrease of that species or even becoming extinct. And normally, these systems are related. These systems are interconnected. Once one player in the food chain or in the food web is compromised, it cannot produce more. So the impact is realized more at the higher trophic level. For example, if there are not any more zooplanktons in the river or in the stream, that means that the small fish larvae that feed on the zooplankton will lack enough feed. And then the big fish or the big aquatic organisms that would feed on the fish will also lack. So in that chain follows until the top of the food chain. And then we can have an entire ecological effect, which might be devastating. And so what ecotoxicology brings is that we are able to know what happens at the lower level, at both the lower level of organismal organization as well as the entire ecosystem. Unlike the normal toxicology or the normal ecological studies where we go and we normally start at the population level, we go to the river, we sample the sediment, or we sample the sediment, and then we can do species composition and then diversity. Yeah. For example, by the time you realize that you don't have enough, say, worms in the sediment, or you have too many chironomids in the sediment, yeah, we make a conclusion. Wow, because of the chironomids, we have maybe more organic pollution, less oxygen. But then by the time we realize that the system has already been compromised. But if we did the study at a lower level of species of organism or organism, like maybe at the organ level or the individual or the cellular level, we would be able to try to mitigate. Yeah. For example, in my study, I'm looking at three organisms at different trophic levels. So I'm looking at the marine amphipods. These are crustaceans. They stay in the mud. I look at the polychaetes. They're also worms. Then I look at the mussel, the blue mussels. This thing you see, it looks like the freshwater bivalve, but this is marine water. And then I also look at the fish. So, but at all these levels, I study gene expression. I study cellular metabolism and then responses through looking at things like energy reserves. I also look at the organ level, where I look at the bioaccumulation of these heavy metals in the organs. And then at the individual level, I look at the scope for growth or the energy balance. So once we finish all this, and then you do such kind of studies at the several levels of the food web, you can be able to model or to make a general conclusion about how the ecosystem is being impacted by a given pollutant or a group of stressing factors. Why does it matter? There is a small statistic here. For example, from this scholar, in the last 10 years, we've had over a 300 million population increase in just sub-Saharan Africa alone. It's good. It's not bad. We still have enough space in Africa. It's not bad to have a high population. But this high population is going to increase the pressure on the inland water resources. And I think we all agree on this. So we need more food. So that means more agriculture, more deforestation, more pesticides. So we shall need more fish. As we all know that in capture fisheries, the population, the demand for fish has exceeded the supply which we can get from the natural stock. So we need more aquaculture. So that one will also mean more things like more large-scale aquaculture investment, say in cage fish farming, and this will increase the chances of antibiotics into the natural water systems, as well as the feed wastes increasing, the organic matter content. Urbanization, because we shall need where to stay. We need to develop small remote areas around the natural streams into towns, into cities. So all these increase the risks of plastic pollution, of trace metals, and also all sorts of things. And this increases the potential of chemical pollution in our water bodies. So this is just a snapshot of what's happening all over the world, but it doesn't cover everything. I just picked out of these just as an example. For example, in Uganda, we are trying all avenues to increase fish production because Lake Victoria wild stocks have really reduced in the last decade. So there is a big investment in cage fish farming. But now we don't know if the Lake Victoria is ready to receive these big investments of cage fish farming. Of course, environmental impact assessments are carried out before the cage fish farms are established. They are carried out and then they say, yeah, everything is okay, we can do cage fish farming. But we don't know how much, until what extent can we expand this? Yeah. So, for example, when we look at this industrial semi-industrial gold mining near Ituri River in DRC, in Congo, you can all agree with me, this is not the color of natural water. It should be clear or something blue or something, but now this water is looking a bit brownish. And with gold mining, there's a lot of they normally use mercury. So all these things are happening not only in DRC or Uganda or Nigeria, but everywhere in Africa. Everywhere we have water resources, they are being impacted. There's also a nice urbanized countryside here in Niger State. Yeah, so with urbanization, the challenges with the water system that we have. We have sewage, effluent deposition. We have the domestic waste challenges. We have plastic pollution. So through using ecotoxicological tools, we can be able to detect sublethal and early warning responses, which might not be evident if we wait to study at the community level, if we wait to go And for example, this river, if you go to the Niger State and then you wait after 50 years of this establishment of this nice city, and then you start looking into the sediment to see, oh, wow, there is a change in the population structure of the normal sediment-dwelling macroinvertebrates or what. But if we start early enough, we can be able to advise, we can be able to know, and then try to put up mitigation measures or to advise the policymakers or the investors that please, we can only build until this homes. Or if we are to do this, we need to improve, or before we build a factory near this river, we need to ensure that our water purification or treatment plant is effectively working well. Or before we start this cage fish farming, we don't have to expand it to a given level, because according to the way we've seen the water snails in this region, if we exceed this concentration of antibiotics, they are going to be compromised. And once they are compromised, the big fish, wild fish, or the big aquatic organisms which depend on this will be compromised, won't have enough food. Or if there are some heavy metals being bioaccumulated in this species of maybe snails or macroinvertebrates, say aquatic worms, once they accumulate beyond a given level, we are risking, because bioaccumulation and biomagnification, the impacts are higher at a higher food level, at a higher trophic level than at a low trophic level. For example, if one worm accumulates, say, 500 micrograms of copper, but then a big fish will need to eat like 50 worms or 100 worms in its lifetime. Yeah. And then so that's a multiplication factor of so many times. And then if the big fish eats that, then you, the human who is eating, you're not eating the concentration in one worm, but you are eating the concentration which have been consolidated or accumulated by the fish that have ate hundreds of many these small zooplanktons that have been that have accumulated the heavy metals. So ecotoxicology tools would be really relevant to inform. In addition, we are not saying that they should work in isolation, but they can really complement the normal toxicological or the normal ecological assessment that have been done. To continue, well, we know ecotoxicology research is good in Africa, and we're not saying that it has not been done. It's being done, but under a lot of setbacks, under a lot of challenges. For example, we have inconsistent baseline data on long-term monitoring of pollution. Yeah, this might not be a problem of only Africa, but all developing countries. Yeah, we still have a challenge of infrastructure and the capacity limitation. For example, we have limited lab facilities, and also we have limited ecotoxicologists. Yeah, for example, I will take an example of Uganda, where I come from. Yeah, you enter a university, yeah, ecotoxicologists are really few, even in research institutes. I don't know what's happening in Nigeria, in Ghana, or other, but I think, yeah, the situation is not so different. Also, these pollutants always happen in complex mixtures. And so our organisms or our water systems are always exposed to a cocktail of pollutants alongside climate change scenarios. So we need to devise models that can be able to help us understand what's happening. Yeah, because in the laboratory settings, we normally concentrate maybe on one chemical or one class of pollutants, but normally in nature, that's not the case. Yeah, you find one stream or one lake that is impacted by so many things. So the systems are really under pressure from different avenues of stressors. Also, the government and fragmented policy frameworks. Most of the frameworks don't really see the value of ecotoxicological research. And also funding and sustainability. Most of the people, or most of the organizations interested in such kind of studies are donor-funded projects. For example, in East Africa, we had a project called the Lake Victoria Environmental Management Initiative, and also the Nile Basin Initiative, mostly funded by Egypt. Yeah, so once those projects end, yeah, the studies stop. Yeah, and I know that happens on River Niger or River Zambezi, or where also public awareness and community engagement is still lacking. Yeah, but our hands are not so tight. We can do something about this. what if we think about potential strategies to curb this? For example, if we look at something like for the baseline surveys, if we strengthen water and sediment and biota samples in collaboration with the local universities, yeah, because most of these studies they become really expensive and hard to be done with an individual organization. But if we collaborate with universities or bigger research institutions, yeah, we can have some answers and we can have tangible benefits. Also, if there's a chance to train local scientists and technicians, and also to develop or upgrade the regional laboratories, and also strengthen collaboration with international laboratories, can still help. For the complex mixtures and multiple stressors, uh, yeah, what can be done can be employing an effect-based method like bioassays and biomarkers to detect the biological responses. Yeah, biomarkers, these are measurable physiological responses in an organism to be able to, which can be translated into an effect. For example, if you get a malaria parasite, like for us who have grown up in Africa, we know your mom can just touch you and they say, yeah, because of the high temperature, yeah, you should be having malaria. And in most cases, when you go to the doctor, they'll tell you the same. So that high temperature increase, okay, we can, in quotes, we can take it as a biomarker. But in ecotoxicology, we have biomarkers, like maybe if we have things like bioaccumulation, if we have things like reduced respiration, or if we have things like expression of some genes. So these biomarkers normally respond to a given trigger. So there are biomarkers which have been studied, which we can use to know that, okay, once you see this expressed, it means there is metotoxicity or there's a mixture of this and this, so they can really help. And also for government and fragmented policy framework and governance, yeah, we can try to develop multi-sectoral steering committees which can coordinate across agencies and countries. Yeah, surely to deal with such scenarios or to deal with such important natural resources, you can't do it as one state and you can't do it as one country. For example, a river like Niger, it doesn't cross in only Nigeria, it crosses in so many countries. A river like River Nile, it crosses in 11 countries. So you can't handle it as Egypt alone. You need Uganda, you need Sudan, you need Senegal, all these countries where the given river, for example, Lake Victoria is shared by 3 countries, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and other lakes like Lake Malawi, Lake Tanganyika, and others. So there it calls for multinational or international collaborations. And also there is need to align monitoring with existing frameworks like the African Union 2063 and as well as the SDG number 6, the one that concerns with clean water and everything. So if these ecotoxicological research agendas are also included in the big agendas, maybe it can help. And also we need to advocate for national budget allocation and also building public-private partnerships. This one can help also to support the government and also to try and see how this can be developed. And then for the public awareness and community engagement, yeah, we need to use community-based monitoring where we can involve the local fishermen, the farmers, the civil society organization, as well as the youth groups through citizen science. Actually, citizen science is taking a lead now, is one of the ways that scientists are trying to develop to communicate their findings to the communities and also to engage the community to know that what is being done, that the research that is being carried out is beneficial to everyone, not only to the scientists. A few policy implications. Yeah, for example, for the government, there is need to support national pollution inventories and also to invest in the ecotoxicological capacity, like in the laboratories, as well as training the scientists and technicians. For the non-government organizations, yeah, community aquatic health monitoring and awareness campaigns. This will be really important. For the scientists, we need we need to combine conventional ecological and ecotoxicological studies together. As I said in the beginning, that ecotoxicological models or studies do not work to be effective. They can't work in isolation. So we can have maybe at a given when we are carrying out environmental impact assessment, we don't need to look at only ecotoxicological studies because they take a lot of time and they require a lot of resources, but we can combine. Maybe we carry out a survey using ecological models or ecological methods. We measure the sediment, we measure the composition and diversity, and then we use also ecotoxicological studies at a given stage. So there we can have some result. We can have results which are really relevant and within the shortest possible time. Also, we need to work across disciplines as scientists and also to publish research work or results in accessible formats. I think we all know that everyone who is in our African university or research institute, we see a lot of interesting research work, but we can't access it. You find a nice paper, but you can't read because your access only stops at the abstract. So if you don't have a colleague in a European university who can help you to open it, you can't. Maybe we need to inform the policies and the government or the universities to be able to subscribe these journals, or we should as scientists be able to publish our research not only in these expensive journals, but also in local journals which can be accessible. Or we should also be able to present research work in two simple ways, maybe through skits or through adverts or through on billboards, or we can put the things on the shores of the lakes or on the banks of the river. Simple message, but which can be really informative. Yeah, and instead of publishing everything and then we hide it, the local community, which are the direct beneficiaries of this, don't normally access the information. Yeah. So maybe I try to suggest some pathways to action. Yeah, we need to expand monitoring. Then the dialogues, we need to strengthen science and policy bridges. And also for the decisions, we need to prioritize ecotoxicology in environmental impact assessment and planning. Why now? It's because freshwater ecosystems are vital and vulnerable, and also interdisciplinary partners can drive the change. Thank you so much for listening. And I just want to tell you that ecotoxicology is not just a science, it's a survival tool. Thank you for listening.
Wow, excellent, amazing, and interesting. Thank you so much, Mr. Moses, for
You're
this
welcome.
amazing section. I really
Yes.
enjoyed it, and again, one or two things from it. Thank you so much
Yes.
for this. So,
You're
if you all agree with me that at least you gain one or two things from this session, please kindly react to this. Let me see your reaction, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So it's time for question and answer. If you have any question, you can put it on the chat box or you can raise your hand if you want to talk. Any question? Okay. It's like everybody understand the okay. Please ask your question, Oluwakemi.
Really nice talk to our guest speaker for today. I really learned a lot about ecotoxicology and the negative impact of some of these contaminants and pollutants in the environment. But talking about Nigeria or developing countries in Africa that have limited access to science and capacity to carry out some of this research, what do you think are the ways that we can engage the government more in understanding negative impact of some of these occurrences and how we can better approach solving them? Because it's, for example, you're in Belgium and community awareness is different from how it is in Africa. Priority
true.
is different across the leadership. So how can we convince the government to see the negative impacts of some of these environmental occurrences and finding solutions to the problems?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So it's time for question and answer. If you have any question, you can put it on the chat box or you can raise your hand if you want to. If you want to talk. Any question?
Really nice talk to our guest speaker for today. I really learned a lot about ecotoxicology and the developing countries in Africa that have limited access to science and capacity to carry out some of this research. What do you think are the ways that we can engage the government more in understanding how
Can I respond or I wait
Yeah,
for
yeah, I'm
some
done.
questions?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Olwakemi. Surely this is a big challenge because mostly in African countries, like country where I come from, Uganda, science looks not to be a big priority. I would say research doesn't look to be a big priority. Of course, in the policies they say, yeah, we are developing science, 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 but then you see from the funding that they give, it already shows you an impression that yeah, this is not a priority. But I think what we can do is to, we as scientists or we as people who really know or have some ideas or some knowledge at what's really happening, we can try to do collaborations maybe because maybe the people at the top, the decision makers, are not informed about what should be done and then what is there. I think we can start small through organizations like Aquaworld. Yeah, we can maybe look for sponsorship opportunities, which look for when they make calls for organizations that work towards water safety. So this is one of the avenues where we can pass to raise our voices and then also to try start off some work which can maybe interest our local leaders, and then the communication can go up and up and up to the big people to know that really this type of research is important. But it's not a straight road that hey, you're going to wake up one day and then you tell the people in the ministry that we need to change this and this, because most of our people respond after something big has happened, after actually they respond after things have happened beyond repair. But yeah, it's not so straightforward, but we can just do it, I think, via collaborations. We collaborate with the universities, and then through that, we follow these international calls for, yeah, for environment, for nature, then for ecosystems. Yeah. But of course, we can't keep quiet. We can also try through our respective ministries. Yeah, we take our proposal and we tell them, look, yeah, but the only challenge with this type of studies, ecotoxicology, they are really expensive studies. That's why most of the studies we have on water quality is mainly basic ecological monitoring, where we just go, we take sediment samples, we go to the laboratory, you just need a dissection microscope or a compound microscope, put a few drops of iodine, then you identify, okay, I have chironomids, I have fish larvae, I have this, and then we stop there. But then with ecotoxicology now, where you have to go deep and then you say, okay, I need to see how the molecules are changing, how this is changing. Yeah, something we just need to have bigger collaborations, mostly with the universities and international funders.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. Is there any other question? Any question? Okay. So if there is no question again, so thank you so much, Mr. Moses, for your time and for taking this session with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I don't know if Mr. Paul has anything to say.
Which of the Mr. Paul?
Ariola.
Okay. It's the logo of the call, I think.
Okay. Okay. So, or if anybody has any contribution so far for the topic, it's highly welcome. We can do that. But if not, can end the call. Okay. Yes, to talk about. Thank you so much for everyone that joined us for this amazing session. And I believe we gained one or two things from the session. Thank you all. And We are expecting you to join us for the next one. Till then, take care and have a lovely day. Bye. Mr. Moses,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Also,
Bye.
thank you everyone for
You're welcome.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Bye.
Suebat.
Thank you.